Welcome all to the 9th Annual Dry Farming Collaborative Winter Convening. I am your co-host, Lucas Niebert, and I'm joined here by Matt Davis and Tegan Moran. We're all OSU faculty, and we're helping put on this event. This is the 9th year it's happened, and we've gone virtual, and we hope that's been convenient for a lot of you. And without further ado, here's the agenda. So the format is generally 15 to 30-minute talks. All the invited talks are short, kind of lightning talks. Should be like about 10 minutes or so, with room for questions at the end. So save your questions on the talks for the end. Every year we start with this intro to what really is dry farming, and a number of you are experienced dry farmers, and even more of you are just getting into it. And so dry farming is a form of rain-fed agriculture. Rain-fed agriculture relies solely on precipitation for water needs, and dry farming is unirrigated crop production during a dry season, usually in a region that receives 20 inches or more of annual rainfall. And that's different than dry land farming in the sense just in how much rain that we get. Dry farming, you get enough rain to replenish the soil moisture reserves each year. In dry land farming, there's less soil moisture reserves each year. And so sometimes you need to leave a field fallow to replenish that moisture, leave that field fallow for a year or two. And these definitions I got from Wikipedia. They're not universally held. More generally, we like to think of dry farming as a place-based practice to grow crops within the means of the environment. In this case, the precipitation patterns. And dry farming practices will differ based on place and based on who defines what it is. But the two basic principles that I believe dry farming have are soil water conservation and using drought resilient plants. I like to, just like last year, I really like to highlight this important concept. And Hopi is one of the this quote is, Hopi is one of the few places I know where corn is raised to fit the environment and the environment not manipulated to fit the corn. That's a quote from Michael Koteswa Johnson, who's a Hopi dry farmer. And the dry farming, we really embrace this concept of working within the means of the environment and not unsustainably adding things or manipulating the environment just to fit certain crops that you think you should be growing in that area. You can find this talk. Michael Johnson gave a talk in the 2021 Dry Farming Collaborative Winter Convening, and you can find this at the link provided. Speaking of place-based practices, we're interested in, we're based in Oregon, Corvallis, Oregon, Willamette Valley, but we love to forge collaborations across different states, across different regions, and everybody has their own unique context. So the two dry farmers who are going to be talking to us first today, they're Ansley Roberts, 21 Acres Farm in Seattle, Washington, and Joe Shermer of Dirty Girl Produce that's in Santa Cruz, California. And one key about dry farming in Corvallis, Santa Cruz, and Seattle is that we share a similar climate. It tends to be this warm summer Mediterranean climate in which there's lots of a significant amount of precipitation in the cool season, and then during the warm season there's a seasonal drought. So right when you need water the most, when it's really hot, you're not getting it out of the sky. And so that's why a lot of our region relies heavily on irrigation, but it doesn't need to be such a heavy reliance on irrigation. And I just got into comparing our different regions, our different locales represented in the conference today. So in Santa Cruz, where they get kind of a more steady, a milder summer climate because they have these coastal effects. In Seattle and Corvallis, there's hotter temperatures in the middle of the summer. Santa Cruz does get less average rainfall per year, however, so there's a trade-off here. And furthermore, we have similar growing degree days between the states, although Corvallis gets a little warmer than Seattle, for example, and Santa Cruz has a longer growing season. Continuing along with maps, we have a map of our meeting attendees, those who shared their address and registration. They're represented here as pins on this map. And so, as you can see, we have a lot of representation from Oregon, where the Dry Farming Collaborative got started, and we have some representation in Northwestern Washington, BC, and also down the coast to Southern California, and also the central coast of California. And of the people who registered, I did some little stats yesterday. So a lot of us who are here in this room are just beginning dry farming, 41%, and 38% are beginning dry farmers. They have a little bit of experience, and then 15% are more experienced dry farmers. So one of the other questions in the registration was why dry farm? The two very popular answers were to increase the water resilience of our food system and to conserve fresh water for ecosystem health. So a caring for the environment, and the other responses had slightly more functional reasons, like it reduces weed pressure. I'm dry farming on land without water rights. My water supply is at risk, etc. And we'll get into the trade-offs of dry farming in a little bit. And dry farming challenges, some of the more important ones were lack of knowledge or experience with dry farming, which is represented by the fact that a lot of you all are beginner dry farmers. And there is some concern that dry farming is inherently too risky, or the economic costs outweigh the benefits. So here's a slightly more involved list of benefits and costs of dry farming. We have benefits of water conservation, weed control. We get like requires like half of the labor in the fields we have found to dry farm in terms of weed management, fewer irrigation expenses. There's also novel marketing opportunities, which our guest speaker, Lane Selman, is going to talk about today. And increased flavor of produce, which folks will talk about today as well. And also increased storability because the produce has less water content. And finally, you can grow it. It allows for opportunities to grow food on land that doesn't have water rights or access to irrigation. Costs of dry farming include lower yield than irrigated. It's not a yield maximization strategy. Can be less room for error. If you don't have irrigation at all as a backup, then you have to be very careful with site preparation and then timing of planting, and you have to use appropriate cultivars. And depending on the time of year, the drought stress, if your plants are negatively stressed already, they're water stressed already, then dry farming can be really challenging. And there's also a lack of cultural knowledge that we're hoping to help resolve. And the basic dry farming principles we have here are: number one, identify a suitable location. Number two, early soil prep and planting before the soil dries out. And we're trying to conserve that soil moisture through mulching or shallow cultivation. We use appropriate crop varieties, those that are been bred to or adapted to dry farm conditions, or otherwise do well in dry farm conditions. And also we're trying to be diligent with weed control to make sure that the plants that we want to grow food from don't have to compete for water. And we're also promoting microclimates with lower evaporative potential. So keeping plants maybe a little more shaded or buffered from the wind. And if we successfully dry farm and if we don't add water to the surface of the soil or otherwise, if the water is deeper, then the soil, the plant roots will follow the water, the soil moisture down. And so they'll get really deep. And so here we have an example of dry farmed tomato roots on the left-hand side versus irrigated. You'll see the roots are taking advantage of all this otherwise untapped soil moisture. And same with the squash roots. In August, during this field day, we dug a deep hole and found there's still soil moisture, but it was about 2 feet down. And furthermore, we have we have the soil water tension. And so we use soil moisture meters to indicate when roots have reached certain depths. And so if you follow this like 4-foot depth, this purple one, we find that these squash roots in early to mid-August have reached 4 feet deep. Dry farming starts with soil. It's a big component of site suitability. And when we're dry farming, we're working with the moisture that's held to soil particles after gravity has done its job. So the water table recedes as the season warms up and dries up. And now you just have this water held to the soil particles. And it's just basically going to sit there. Maybe the very topsoil might start evaporating if you don't manage it well, but otherwise it's there. And so if you have a deeper soil, a soil that maybe has finer particles, then it'll hold on to more water. And when you take a soil profile, you can calculate how much water your soil can hold. You need to be aware that there are subsoil constraints as well. There could be changes in the soil texture, like abrupt changes into like a clay layer or a plow pan that can restrict roots from getting as deep as you would like them to. And here we see a great illustration of how, the coarser soils don't hold on to as much water, and finer soils are nice. If it's a heavy clay, then it holds on to a lot of water, but also it almost holds too tightly. It holds too tightly to that water, so it's not available to roots. So really, the most suitable soils we're finding are like loam, silty clay loam, where they have the most plant available water. And also organic matter is another component of this equation. So for those who do need to irrigate because their soil is maybe coarser, then we use soil moisture meters. And so you can make irrigation decisions using these moisture meters. And I have probably more slides than I have time for. And so I'm gonna move a little quickly through some of these slides. And another aspect of dry farming that I'm just going to mention here is managing your soils to retain water. And so that's increasing soil organic matter, trying to use mulch or at least shallow cultivation or no-till. The more you disturb the soil in the spring, the more it will release moisture that would otherwise go to your plants. And cover cropping, like terminating a winter cover crop early would be a good idea, because if you wait too long, then they will be wicking all the moisture out of your soil before you can put in your warm season crop. Climate is another component of this. This is pictures of a dry farm field after the 2021 heat dome, and the plants did really well and we didn't have to water because they were accessing that subsoil moisture. Another big component of dry farming is the effect of climate and how hot and dry it is. Plants that are subject to hot, dry conditions have to pull more water out of the soil and are otherwise lose their efficiency in using that water. And we see that on this map on the right side, all the colors that are like yellows, the warm colors are those regions in which we're getting hotter, drier, we're getting drier summer temperatures. And so that's something to consider. And so sheltering from the wind and sun is another important thing to consider with dry farming. You can use tall plants like corn or sunflowers in the field that can be serve as wind breaks or add partial shade, or you can use structures. In this case, we're doing an agrivoltaic study in which the potatoes on the right were partially shaded and the potatoes on the left were not. And there's a very visible difference. And the final kind of component of dry farming I wanted to talk about was using appropriate plants. And so working with plants that have the right traits, so they either mature early before things dry up, or they're really good at increasing their rooting zone and increasing their water use efficiency. And we're also, during this meeting, going to hear from Dan Schuler at Moondog's Farm, where he's going to talk about perennial systems. If the roots are already there and they have a chance to grow every year, then a lot of perennials can just dry farm themselves. And so there are places to find crop varieties that do well dry farmed. And so Adaptive Seeds, for example, has this dry farm adaptive seed collection. Hardy Seeds from Southern Oregon, they've been working a lot with water limited crops. And so this is another great source for seeds where there is less water available than in more northerly parts of Western Oregon. And then the dry farming seed directory from the Dry Farming Institute is another one. And then Amy Garrett is going to take the mic from me and talk more about the Dry Farming Institute and also just how we can compare and contrast the different dry farming entities. We have the OSG Dry Farming Project, the Dry Farming Institute, and the Dry Farming Collaborative. So Amy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
Thank you, Lucas. That was a great overview. And yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I did work with OSU for about 11 years and was able to help get the dry farming project started in my time there. So a lot of growers that we were working with were on land without water rights or limited water availability. So I started off doing some case studies, visiting some farmers down in California, and also one down in here in the southern Willamette Valley who had been dry farming for many years or decades in some cases. So we took what we learned from them and did a demonstration at Oregon State University at the Oak Creek Center for Urban Horticulture in 2015. And for those of you that don't remember, 2015 was a pretty intense drought year. So that year, there was a lot of growers who had their irrigation restricted or had their wells run dry. So we had a field day of our dry farm plot there on August 3rd. And a lot of the growers who attended, I think there was over 100 people that attended, and were surprised that there was anything growing, and that we did not irrigate. We planted early using a lot of the techniques that Lucas just highlighted. And so a lot of people in a follow-up evaluation said that they were planning to experiment with this on their own land, given the the harsh reality of water constraints or their well running dry or water rights being restricted. So to harness all that interest, I think 97% of the people that responded to that evaluation said that they were going to be experimenting with us on their own. And we didn't have a lot of resources with extension at the time. So decided to develop some participatory research projects to help address the most common questions. And at that time, it was, is my site suitable for dry farming? And what crops or varieties do well dry farmed? So that's where we started developing some participatory research projects. And some of that, those papers are published now that are available on the OSU website. And so the community of practice is the Dry Farming Collaborative. A lot of the research efforts have been taking place at OSU. Matt and Lucas and Alex Stone and others have done a lot to help design some research projects and do variety trials, and a lot of the information is available on their website. The Dry Farming Collaborative kind of evolved organically. It's includes a lot of growers in Oregon and Washington and California, but then there's a lot of growers far beyond that in different places in the world that are dry farming, that are probably finding us through general searches. So there's been the Facebook page is one of the primary tools used for communication, and then Tegan and Lucas have the Dry Farming Collaborative email list. So that can be used, it's used for research, or I'm sorry, information sharing, and then the Facebook group as well. And so I think there's, I don't know, and more than I think a couple thousand or so people on the Dry Farming Collaborative Facebook group now. So that's if you're on Facebook, that's a great resource to chime in and ask questions and share about what you're doing. A lot of growers with experience will, chime in and answer questions or share their experience. So that was developed as a tool just to help with knowledge exchange, given that a lot of people have knowledge on dry farming and don't necessarily even call it dry farming. So the Dry Farming Institute is a nonprofit that blossomed out of this community of practice, and the founding board members are part of the Dry Farming Collaborative, and were there growers, researchers, educators, and together we wanted to kind of expand on the work of the Dry Farming Collaborative, which was mostly kind of the trials are taking place mostly in the Willamette Valley. So it's we wanted to expand that work beyond that geography and just help address the gaps and build some more resources. Next slide, please. So at the Dry Farming Institute, we support farmers and gardeners in the practice of dry farming through collaborative research, education, and marketing. And our mission is empowering growers to thrive with less water. So working with, gardeners, farmers, both commercial and non-commercial homesteaders, given that water constraints are affecting all of us. So kind of working across some of those boundaries. And our website is dryfarming.org. Next slide, please. So some of the programs and activities that we've developed are mostly education outreach efforts. And a couple of the resources we've developed are also based on questions that we get. They've kind of evolved to help fill in the gaps. So we're aspiring to develop more of a dry farming resource hub, and a lot of resources, as you'll see on the OSU website, are there. But some people have questions like what crops and varieties do well dry farmed? And so to make that information easier to find, we've Lucas mentioned the Dry Farming Seed Directory. So that's a resource that's just beginning to evolve, and I think there's 15 or so varieties listed currently that have done well in the OSU dry farm trials. And we would like to develop that resource collaboratively with input from other growers, plant breeders, seed stewards, So if there's a variety that has done particularly well for you dry farmed or in limited water situations, there's a form on the website for you to suggest or recommend that variety. So we'd love to build that in collaboration with you all. And then another opportunity, oh, one moment, is the marketing effort. So there are, you'll learn from some of the other speakers today that people get excited sometimes about the more concentrated flavor of dry farm produce. And there'll be questions that come up about where can I get a couple cases of dry farm tomatoes? So we started to develop a listing, the dry farm produce directory, and it's very small so far, but it does contain some growers in Washington, Oregon, and California. And we would love someday for that to be an interactive map and for that to grow. So there is a form listed, and after I get done talking here in a couple moments, I'll share a link in the chat. If you are dry farming and would like to be added to the directory, the handout that's kind of pictured there in the top middle of the slide is a educational kind of half sheet that we've shared with farmers. And on the back, there's a QR code that links to the produce directory. So we want to help make those connections. Next slide. One of the projects that enabled us to move from a group of volunteers, just a working board, to hiring our first staff last year was funded by NIFA, the National Institute for Food and Agriculture. So we have a Advancing Water Resilient Strategies project, and that's working with mid and small scale underserved producers on the West Coast. And part of that is going to be partnering with farmers and schools, tribes, and nonprofits to host demonstrations. So realizing that a lot of growers are working in different contexts, like Lucas was saying, like different soil types, different microclimates. We want to highlight examples of what this looks like in all these different contexts by partnering with growers and highlighting their stories and what they're trying, what's working for them, et cetera. So I mentioned there, we're gonna, in the short list, we have partners in Washington and Oregon this year that are our 6 demonstration sites for 2024. And we're going to be having field days at each of these sites. So we'll be announcing those field days, I think, after we get things planted. Some other parts of that project, working with all the partners, kind of mentioned at the bottom. So American Farmland Trust is the lead on that. We're also working with the climate hubs, Oregon State University, Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network, Washington Water Trust. So we're going to be doing some agricultural professional training. My coworker, Ashley Rude, is going to be supporting that effort, and also doing some peer-to-peer learning circles. So given that a lot of our efforts working in this arena, we kind of get siloed, we're going to be working across the state lines a little bit and collaborating for this project. So we're pretty excited about that and grateful for all the partners we have on board. I think I have one more slide. Oh, 2 more. So in making connections, that's one of the efforts we're working on, is just kind of helping to build bridges and make connections in the dry farming community. And that one of those ways is like with marketing opportunities. And I've had conversations with organically grown company and also market of choice, and organically grown company was working with a grower last year to market dry farm melons, and generated some excitement about that. So there is opportunity and interest to expand on that work. So a lot of the growers that we've worked with in this project have been very small scale. But I just wanted to highlight that there is opportunity for some wholesale marketing. And Market of Choice is another entity that approached the Dry Farming Institute with interest in featuring dry farming as part of their Dig Local program. And So mentioning that here to just help make that connection. I think there is going to be a couple of folks from Market of Choice here today. And so if you all are here, Market of Choice people, feel free to chime in on the chat there. But I'll be sharing with Lucas and Tegan some resources they have for growers that are interested in working with them. What some of the requirements are to scale up to sell to these larger markets. And one more slide, I think. So there's a QR code there on the screen to connect with the Dry Farming Institute. There's also there's some multiple ways to connect with us, including Instagram, Facebook, sign up for getting access to the produce directory if you would like to take a look at that. So if you just use your phone camera and shine it on that QR code there, it should bring up on your phone just some easy, quick links there to connect with us. And so I just wanted to, as we transition, I think Lucas is going to be sharing more about the dry farming project, but I hope I've helped to, it's pretty confusing sometimes to think about the OSU dry farming project, which, you know, is at OSU doing a lot of the research and education efforts. The collaborative is like this community of practice that blossomed out of some of the explorations and addressing some of the key questions that growers have. And then, yeah, the Dry Farming Institute is kind of expanding the reach of this work, working across state lines and maybe eventually beyond, you know, across country lines at some point too, working with climate analogs. But I just wanted to end with saying that together we can thrive with less water. And I look forward to connecting with you all and continuing to create space for this work.
Thank you, Amy. So yeah, in the interest of time, I'm going to go a little quick through the OSU dry farming project updates. These links are, again, the website that we've been sharing in the chat for this meeting. They have the links to these slideshows with and their PDF versions. So there's clickable links. And so this link goes to the OSU Dry Farming Project website, and we have a number of resources here that you can find, including past recordings and the YouTube channel and research projects. And real quickly, I wanted to just say that Matt Davis, he's been leading the Dry Farm Tomato project currently, and he will be giving an update on that. But coming soon, there will be kind of a report from a 3-year variety trial in dry farm tomatoes. There is a 2-year variety trial in dry farm melons, and that has come to a close. And you can find a link to 2022 results and a report of the results, and the 2023 report, growing season report, is coming up real soon. So stay tuned for that. I did want to highlight there's some amazing standout varieties of dry farm melons. That is an unofficial list that I myself have curated with Matt's recommendations as well. And so here are some. I'm just going to pop them here and go to the next slide. Well, I guess I do want to say that there's some really long storing varieties of melons, and the fact that they're dry farm probably increases their storage. So Lambkin, Piel de Sapo, and these canary types on the right are quite long storing. And the Crenshaw variety as well can store for less time, but another couple weeks. And when I say long storing, I'm saying like eating melons in November, December. And this year we're doing a collaborative dry farm melon variety trial where you will receive seeds for 5 varieties of melons if you're interested. And there's a sign up on this PDF version of the presentation, also on the website. And we also put to close the first year of the Dry Farming Accelerator program, which included working with growers to help them getting started dry farming. And one of the first steps is taking these big soil cores. And as a part of this program, there's this curriculum as well that we developed, also like Matt Davis and I, and also Amy. We interviewed farmers across the Pacific Northwest region, and sort of wove their interviews into these recorded presentations. So you can go to this website now and dive deeper into the basics of dry farming, including, practices, principles, site suitability aspect, and also crop and varietal selection. And we're also developing this dry farm map, this suitability map. Right now it's just in Oregon, but we would hope to expand it beyond. And so that is also available. The link is also available on the website. It's an interactive map. It's not necessarily a predictive map. It's kind of just a way to get started with a conversation and think about where dry farming is most suitable in our area. And the suitability map is based on different layers, including precipitation, soil water storage, and potential evapotranspiration, so how dry the summers can get. And also there is a site suitability publication that just went out, led by Matt Davis. And we are working on a OSU extension publication for site suitability as well. We also started, you will hear from Gabriel Forthall today, who's initiated the African and Asian Farming Research Initiative, in which we're working with crops that are not traditionally grown for cultural reasons in our region, but these African and Asian crops that are traditionally dry farmed. And we're also started collaborating with a warm season forages expert, Cheyenne Gahar at OSU, and we're trying to get started a dry farm forages focus group. So check out that link also in the extended agenda on the website if you're interested in joining a dry farm forages group. And lastly, we're starting this year, the OSU Small Farms Extension team is working on this regional in-person dry farming events in Oregon. The Dry Farming Collaborative started with these local in-person events, and we want to, copy that model and get more folks meeting together in person in the same room. And there is an event coming up, the North Willamette Valley, on February 29th, and you can register here by clicking the link in the presentation. And there will be a coastal Oregon one. We already had a couple meetups in South Willamette Valley and Southern Oregon, but if you want to take a lead and try to engage us, contact us and try to get another event on the calendar for your region, then we're interested in helping you make that happen.